Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1482 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Tuesday here in late May. And today's episode is brought to you by the folks at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I also want to encourage you at the top of the podcast to make us your first listen each and every day. Subscribe and find us anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. And I am back on today's show with my friend Ben Pfeifer talking about the NBA draft. If you missed it on Memorial Day, I posted an episode with Ben about the second round sleepers and options for the Hawks in that slot. Today's show is going to be about the lottery, the top of the draft. Victor Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, the Thompson twins, Brandon Miller, etc. Will all be talked about on this show. And then later on this week, probably on Wednesday, I'll be talking about all of the first round options for the Hawks at 15 overall with Ben. So a 3-part episode of sorts, part 1 already up, part 2 coming to you right now, and then part 3 later on this week. Also on the podcast in recent days, I've talked to Howard Beck, the Locked On NBA podcast insider. I had this player capsule series going on with Glenn Willis. We talked about Saddiq Bey and AJ Griffin, Jalen Johnson, etc. That's an ongoing series and mailbags and all that fun stuff in the offseason. So please subscribe to the show. Tell a friend about the podcast. And without any further delay, I'll have the intro. I'll be back with myself and Ben Pfeifer on the draft and the lottery.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, let's go to the very top now, and then we'll end with the middle of the first round. I'm going to clear out on this one. I haven't done a lot of Wemby talk on the podcast. We don't really have to go crazy on this because everyone's doing it. But I wonder what your take is as far as, like, everyone agrees he's the guy, but is he like what Woj is saying as the greatest prospect in the history of North American team sports, which is what he said on the lottery broadcast? Or is he just like merely the number one guy in the class? Like, where are you on that spectrum right now on Wemby?
I'm pretty in on him being like a very, very legendary prospect at this point. I think it's like I was a little skeptical of that like before this season, especially just because I think like pre-draft crowning anyone as like that level of prospect is kind of foolish and just like, you know, doesn't need to happen. But like I think for Wemby, it's probably fair. I'm thinking of like all of like the best prospects I've ever seen. I think he's not better than Tim Duncan. I think he's not better than LeBron. He's not better than like Luka, I don't think. Or maybe he is. I don't know. Like, I think he did all of the things I wanted him to do this season to like prove how good he was, and that was like be a legit primary creator. Like everyone remembers like the game against Scoot in the US where he was just like hitting like off dribble threes. And people were like, oh, well, like, you know, like he needs to like get his ass on the block. How is he going to do this in a real game? And then for his actual like French Pro League team that he like is carrying in the playoffs, he is just like their primary creator, right. And was from day one as an 18-year-old. It is beyond impressed. Like it's unspeakably insane. Like a 7'4".
Well, yeah, it breaks your brain.
Mobility. It doesn't work. Like, and like his rate, I think his rate of improvement is so under-discussed and also like really important, like has developed these like ball skills slowly the last couple of years. Like the passing is so much better than it was last year. I think his like defensive awareness and instincts have grown a lot this year, which I feel like you don't see a lot at this age, to where like I'm less concerned about his like reaction time and stuff on defense, which I was kind of concerned about before. But yeah, he's insane. Like there's a reason.
Obviously he is. And that's the thing. Like I think I said this on a recent podcast with somebody else. Like I cringe on things easily with hype. I'm definitely the person that is resistant to overstatement on prospects in particular. Like, all right, let's everybody relax. And this is the first time I think ever for me with my brain that I'm not really doing that. The first time I ever found myself like, okay, let's relax was literally the night of the lottery when I made fun of Woj just now for what he said. And it wasn't, it's not the only one says it. He did it on TV and he may not be wrong. And he did say like, he's talking about prospect, not player, prospect. And it's true because no one at 7'4" or whatever he is has done what he can do. Like skill set wise. It's absolutely outrageous.
I
It's
love.
telling. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I love how he is like so physical, which is amazing. Like he wants to like destroy dudes out there.
Yeah,
Like,
he's not soft. People think he's not
like,
soft. He's not.
Like he wants you on Sports Center. Like he's that kind of player, which we love. Like it's just like such a good mentality for a young creator to have. Like especially one who like there's always gonna be frame questions or whatever. Like is really physical. Like his best defenders at this point are like 6'7" centers. Like Chuck Hayes isn't in the league anymore. Like he's fine. Like he's not gonna get that guy. He's not gonna get that guy in the NBA. So
no, I mean it's. I think people. I'm sure he'll get certain people saying he'll get the soft tag. It's just not true. Like if you watch him, he's not soft. He's skinny. He's not soft.
Yeah. Like people said it about like Chet, which like Chet was also physical, but like not as outwardly physical as Wemby, I think. And like he's probably gonna get it some, but like
and even skinnier. Like, Chet's even skinnier than Wemby is. Like Chet
I feel like that could be a thing that's like very quickly dispelled.
Oh, I think so for sure, and I think that also. I don't know. It's telling to me, and we can move on. It's telling to me that like no one's even pretending that there's a conversation. Even when there isn't a conversation, you remember the Zion Ja thing? Like everyone knew.
Yeah, there were people,
but there were people. That's what I'm saying. Like Zion was the consensus number one. I think that's fair to say. But there were people that were at least like kind of floating Ja. You know what I mean? And Ja was a great prospect, and obviously he's a really good player. No one's even pretending this time around. Like even people that are super high on Scoot and are like, "Hey, Scoot would be number one in a lot of draft classes." They're still not doing it.
No one is pretending. I don't think
I have not seen one. I have not seen one. Maybe I'm sure they exist somewhere on the internet, but I have not seen anyone.
I need to tweet that. Is like, is there literally anyone? Let me see if.
On the night of the lottery, I literally tweeted something like, "Okay, who's gonna be the first person tomorrow morning that does the pivot on Wemby?" And is like, "I'd rather have Brandon Miller or something." And maybe that happened. I didn't see it. Anyway, the natural flip after that. After Wemby, because we kind of just put him, he's where he is. Where do you come down on the number 2 debate? Because I
don't think there is one personally.
I've said the same thing. I've said the whole time I didn't really care who got the number 2 pick. I would have taken Scoot. Now there are, I guess, some maybe team exceptions to that. I think if you're, I mean,
the only legit one was Detroit, kind of.
And
probably would have
Detroit,
done it
because
that's the only one I think. Because you have 2 like really good ball handling prospects already.
Well, and they were back-to-back top 5 picks, like number 1 overall, and then another top 5 pick. I mean, I brought up Atlanta, and obviously he's from here. Atlanta has so much invested in these 2 point guards already that it would have been a little bit tough had they got. Obviously, they weren't in the lottery anyway, but this is pre when the Hawks were not in the playoffs yet, and I was like, look, right. Like that would have been one where it's like a conversation because of what they have. Right. I don't think Charlotte is a conversation. I know it is a conversation in the real world. Like it's happening. They might take Brandon Miller, but for me, I think it seems like we agree. I would take Scoot, and I firmly believe, by the way, that he and LaMelo can play together. Like the fit's kind of interesting.
I think that's a really good fit. I like that fit. And it's also a fit that like LaMelo is like really never had like another like legit star guard.
I think it's harder. I think it's harder for Portland. Like let's say if Portland had gotten 2, it would have been harder for Portland because Dame is Dame, and like they have like franchise considerations around their best player in history. Like that's a real conversation. Whereas like LaMelo is a really good prospect, really good player already, but like. He and number 1, he and Scoot can play together, and number 2, like LaMelo is not Dame in Portland level for Charlotte. Like so I think for me, I just take Scoot. But even aside from team context, like, do you have a tier break between Scoot and everybody else? Do you just have him too? So you think it's a different tier?
Okay. Yeah, I don't really see a case for like I love Amen especially, but I don't really see a case for that. Just like this Scoot is like better and younger.
Today's show is brought to you by the Gametime app. If you've ever been trying to find tickets to a big event at the last minute, it can be really stressful. Find out the best idea for your emotions or your wallet. And after all, the ticket buying process should not be the hassle. With Gametime, you have the ability to find a fast and easiest way to buy tickets for sports, music, comedy, and theater, as well as anything you need tickets for. With killer deals, last minute tickets, their best price guarantee. You can avoid stress and start getting hyped for the actual event that you're going to have and all the fun you'll have when you get there. Spring is here, summer is nearing, and there are a lot of things happening in and around Atlanta. I'm sure there are around you as well. And you can find flash deals with the Gametime app. Also, it's so easy to find tickets that you're looking for any kind of event. You can also see images of where your seat would actually be. And you have protection if your event happens to be canceled. Forget all the months of planning. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. And with the Gametime guarantee, you'll get the best possible price. If you find tickets for the event in the same row and the same section for any less, you'll be credited 110% from Gametime of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. You can buy tickets just a matter of seconds, and you'll actually be delivered directly to your phone to make things very easy for you. Download the Gametime app right now. Create an account. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off on your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem that promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off on your first purchase. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So, what do you like about Scoot, and what are you worried about? Because I mean, he's not perfect, but I like him a lot too. So, I wonder what you're worried about. What you like.
I think he's one of like the three best point guard prospects that I've personally seen. Or like I think it's like CP3, Rose probably. Who else? There was someone else I was thinking of that I care of. Fultz maybe as well. Like these kind of guys, John Wall maybe, who are like the kind of level of prospect that Scoot is. Just an absolute like unbelievable athlete who is like really smart, has real defensive upside as well. Like I've seen some people say he's like a B+ athlete, which I think is ridiculous.
No, he's a great athlete.
He's one of the strongest like dudes ever. He's like so ripped, so quick with his first step. He's so strong and like functional, getting like brushing off defenders on drives. And he's really amazing.
He's legitimately what 6'2", 6'3". He's not small.
Yeah, he's a big dude. Yeah. Which I think will come into play on defense, where his main issue is just that he just like doesn't try a lot sometimes, which I think is a symptom of his context probably. More than anything, because he is so strong, has flash defensive aptitude in the past with his lateral ability. He's like good at jumping passing lanes too. There's just a lot to like with Scoot. I am fine with the shot, honestly. Like I'm not particularly worried at all, just because of how amazing of like a pull-up mid-range shooter he is and has been. Like, and as when he dominated in the G League as a 17-year-old, and then did it again as an 18-year-old, which is pretty
not a small thing. I mean, it's. I want to stop there for a second just because I've already seen this. I'm sure you have too. Like people kind of eye rolling the G League, and it's like the G League is considerably better than college. And these guys are all pros.
I don't get that. Like,
well, it's similar to what's happened with certain guys in Europe too, where people just like, and I'm not saying there's this competition like the EuroLeague. People at the highest levels of Europe. That's much better competition than college, and the G League is different than that, but you're playing as pros every night, and like as young as he was,
I think that's part of the reason I was so confident about LaMelo on topic, like was his like legit dominance in a pro league.
Yeah, I mean, and the Scoot thing was even more interesting because he was so young, he couldn't come out, and
he was like Tyra Lewis, like he couldn't get drafted.
Yeah, and the diehard people were talking about him a year and a half ago about like, hey, this guy's coming. We all know this guy's coming, but like people don't watch I mean, let's just be honest. Unless you're doing this on a very serious level, you don't watch the G League very much, if at all. Like maybe you watch if you're a diehard fan of a team, maybe you watch your team's guys when they're there. And I'm guilty of that too. Like I've been watching G League Ignite for draft purposes, but I don't watch G League games, like regular G League games, unless I have a reason to. Like College Park, I cover the Hawks.
Fun. They're pretty fun. It's always fun seeing like fringe prospects you love dominating.
No, and it's not because I don't like. I would watch it if I had time, but like it's during the season. Yeah. Like it is what it is. Like even for me, I've admitted this before. I watch College Park when someone is there that I have to watch. Like last year, I watched a lot more College Park because Jalen Johnson was there like most of the year, and that was a first round pick. So like I have to monitor that guy. This year in College Park, there was nobody like that. Like I watched a little bit of College Park just out of obligation, but like and it's my job. So like no one's watching the G League, man. I mean, I can tell you, like raise your hand beyond highlight videos and beyond the Wemby game on TV, who watched Scoot Henderson this year? People that did this like passionately. The casual people didn't watch him, and that's fine. Let's just be honest about it. It's just what it is.
Yeah, anyway. I mean, he is real good.
He's very good.
I think he and Trent Forrest would make a wonderful backcourt.
I love Trent. I love Trent Forrest. I do. But okay. So is there? So you're not worried about the shot? Is there anything you are worried about with Scoot, or is it just like he's pretty? Nobody's can't miss, but like
I think he's pretty bulletproof. I think just improving, like continuing to improve as like a decision maker on the ball, like showing that he can do that more consistently. I think mostly just like showing that he can keep expanding the pull up. And I think just like where he lands on a defense are the main things for me. But I think he's like generally pretty can't miss. Like I don't think I'm quite confident in him being like at worst like a sub all-star, like pre this season De'Aaron Fox type level player.
That makes a lot of sense. It's kind of what I think too. Like I don't know if he's going to be a top 10 player in the league, but it seems like he's on a pretty
right.
And no, again, I'm always skeptical of saying a guy's floor is super high. Like I'm not going to ever say that a guy like that's floor is De'Aaron Fox. But if that's like a median outcome, or you know what I mean? Like I know you're not saying that either, but the floor ceiling thing is always funny to me because no one ever thinks a top prospect's floor is actually as low as it probably is, just because floors are floors and guys do miss.
I mean, I think Scoot's floor is like pretty high. I mean, all things
I do too. Just athletically, because like the size, athleticism, the way he's played in against professionals already. If the shot doesn't come around, I can see like some outcomes where he's just like a starting point guard.
He's like current Fultz. Like, which is still a pretty good player.
It is. And, I was actually heartened that you mentioned Fultz earlier in the top prospects since, because people just have forgotten that Fultz was like a very worthy number 1 overall pick. And it's just like the weird situation of all time.
He was so sick. He was
and people just brushed. I mean, and I get it. Like, it obviously had all the weirdness that happened. He got traded for Tatum. So like people just forget that. But Fultz was actually that level of prospect. So it can go wrong. But I like Scoot a lot. I would take him if I was Charlotte. And I think that the shooting concerns I understand them, but like they're really rooted in like a pretty small sample size of 3-point shooting from this year. Like everything else, it looks fine, like goes in from mid-range. Like I don't think he's going to be a non-shooter. And even if he is like not a great shooter, a guy you mentioned earlier is I think John Wall is a little bit bigger than Scoot, and John Wall is probably even a little bit better athlete because John Wall was a freak when he was young. But like
I think they're pretty similar, honestly.
They might really be, but like, and that's even more impressive than. But like John Wall was never a great shooter, and it didn't matter that much. Like he was still an all-star. He wasn't like a top 10 player in the league, but he was an all-star without really ever being a shooter.
I think that's like a reasonable like 70th percentile outcome for Scoot.
Which, by the way, is like even for the number 1 pick. For number 1 overall would be a good outcome, and number 2 overall, number 3 overall,
to be like a sub all-star, like a sub low-level all-star.
Yeah. All right, we don't have to keep on that, but okay. I'm not going to ask you about every single player, but it seems like you slipped in there that you have Amen as the next guy on your board. Is that accurate to say?
That is accurate to say, yes.
Talk to me about Amen versus Brandon Miller, because Brandon Miller, I will admit, I've grown on Brandon Miller since the middle of the season. I was pretty skeptical.
Me too. Yeah,
I like him a lot more now than I did. But I also don't think I'm as high as the mainstream has been, or at least the conversation has been.
I think I'm definitely there with you.
So, but I will also say my Amen feelings change like daily, I feel like. So I understand having Miller 3 and Amen or somebody else 4. I totally get that. I also understand the other way, which is where you are, it seems like. So explain where you are on those two guys, or you might even have if it's Miller 4 or not even Miller 4.
I mean, the thing about like Miller for me is like I like even if I have him like 6th or something, like I think him going at 3 or definitely 4 would be totally fine. Like he is a really good prospect. Like I've seen some people like like on like draft Twitter be like like insinuate like the Wiseman thing, passing on Scoot for Brandon Miller, which like that would be like a very dumb thing to do for the Hornets. But like no, like Brandon Miller is like a very legit prospect.
Yeah, that wouldn't be nearly as. I would never go there. I mean, I think I hated it.
Yeah, I mean that being said, I think Amen is a good bit better. Shares like the notable like age concerns. Amen is probably like the best basketball athlete I've ever scouted. That's like Zion and him.
Yeah, I mean, people keep. This is almost another example of what I said earlier about no one watching the G League. It's even more so for Overtime Elite. Like you basically only probably ever
OT
seen.
Is my guilty pleasure. I love OT.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously you're a sicko, and I understand. I've watched a lot of it because of the Thompsons, really. But like people that watch them a lot understand. But Amen really is like a 99.9 percentile athlete. Like it's absolutely absurd.
He's that doesn't mean every athletic tool. Like
yeah, that doesn't mean it's going to work. I will be the first to say like there is a world where it doesn't work because he has some real questions. But like athletically, man, he is really scary. Yeah. Like it's,
I think that
wild.
combined with his passing, give him like a floor even if the shot is really bad. I think the thing with Amen, who is like a legit primary initiator level like advantage creator and playmaker, like 6'7", the quickest guy ever, most explosive, incredible stride length, balance and body control in the air. Handle needs improvement, but I think like again, it's kind of like the shot. Like he just needs to be a good enough handler to like not lose the ball on his moves and stuff. He doesn't need to be incredible or as good of a handle as his brother even. But Amen, I think like the level of shot he has to get to, which is literally it's literally just like defenses like have to care. Like he can't be Ben Simmons, or like Giannis in the bad moments. He can, like as long as he's not that, I think he's going to be fine.
One of the big picture questions about Amen is basically what happens if he doesn't shoot, because right now he's not a good shooter, to say the least. So you think he could still be like a primary initiator without being able to shoot?
Oh, probably. That's the thing. If he's a terrible shooter, like if he hits like a very low end shooting outcome, like probably not. But like I said, I think if he can be like a shooter that defenses care about like the littlest bit, he can be like a primary level initiator.
Yeah, because I'm more curious. I'm more curious to see like I'm not rooting for this outcome obviously, but if he truly hits like a bottom level shooting outcome, what is he? And
I'm so fascinated to see.
I would love to know, and I'm rooting for him to be able to shoot, and hopefully he can. But like if he can't, most guys who really can't shoot have a hard time. I mean, but he's such an outlier in other ways that he might be able to defensively like become an absolute game changer there because of his athleticism. That might be on the table. I never want to assume that because it's more than being an athlete, but because his tools are so good, he might just be great defensively eventually. I don't know. It's a weird one, man.
It's
I have questions.
I feel like these like extremely flawed but like unique, insane guys. Like I do think like without any of like the mentality stuff, like opposite mentality stuff, there are like Ben Simmons parallels, not in terms of play style, or like tools, but just in terms of like how someone can overcome like a really damning flaw, and like be a guy who is like all-star level impact. It would obviously look very different, but that's like the same like mindset that I have when thinking about Amen, really, just because like the way he beats guys off the dribble and can change directions and can make like crazy difficult passing reads. Like we just like haven't really seen a guy like that at that size. Like
no, and as a reminder, as much as I definitely participated in making fun of Ben Simmons was quite good.
He was really good. At his peak. Yeah,
he was quite good.
Sad to say at his peak, but like he was an all-star level player. Like he was like a legit impact guy.
Yeah, and he might have been, I may not have thought that he was as good as some people thought he was at times, but like he was clearly a very good player. So people, I'm sure, will quarrel when they hear Ben Simmons, but you have to remove what's happened since then. But for a period of years, he was really good. So, and he's not, and Amen's not 6'10" like Ben Simmons, but he's a better athlete than Ben Simmons by a lot.
There aren't a lot of 6'5" to 6'10" ball handlers who are like elite advantage, like downhill advantage creators and elite passers as well. Like there are very, very few of those guys in the NBA. And I think Amen, like given the crazy flaws, has a chance to be like one of like I don't even know who the guys are, like Luka, Kawhi, like Shea probably at this point. I think like Tatum, like Donovan Mitchell. Like I think that is the kind of like impact that he can have. And it is extremely exciting. Also with him just being like one of the coolest players ever, like one of my favorite prospects ever just to watch. Like
he's a lot of fun. I'm excited to see him on an NBA court. I'm just fascinated by how it's going to look.
I'm just excited that we find like I feel like obviously this is gonna like there's so much pressure because like it defines like for OTE to kind of like it's
both
really important for that experiment. Like I don't like OTE has its flaws. I think it's better than some people say in terms of competition, but like I don't know.
They really need one or both of the Thompsons to be good. They really do, because they are the guys. They were clearly the best guys I've ever had, and that will be fascinating. Before I forget to follow him, Brandon Miller. We talked about him a little bit, but the theory of basically 6'9" shooter. What do you make of the finishing? Because that seems to be a lot of the split with Brandon. Not all of it, but a lot of like people that really love him kind of buy it. People that don't buy the inside the arc scoring, because the shooting at 6'9" is like the primary appeal, I think, in some ways. But what do you make of Brandon Miller, like beyond the hype cycle, like as a player?
Yeah, I mean the shooting is definitely the reason that you're into him. I'm not super high on the finishing. I think just with his size and like fluidity and some vertical pop, like it's not going to be horrible. But like I think even like the midseason improvements were like there was a lot of variance, like still a lot of like struggling to get open looks at the rim and like good open looks from 2-point range. It's really interesting, but like he is like a fluid handler who can like get low and really like make guys miss and pick and roll. He's like great at setting up his shots mostly, where that handle hasn't really, like I think because of like maybe some strength issues and just general like feel stuff, hasn't translated into like mid-range scoring. I think it definitely could. Just having someone who's like such an unbelievable pull-up and catch and shoot guy at that size with like enough defensive tools to be fine. And I'm pretty low on his defense. I think just like the off-ball stuff is pretty problematic, especially like given his age as well. But I think like just because of the like athletic tools, he can be someone who's like not bad on defense for sure. Like who's like a fine defender. And that's like in itself a really valuable player, especially when you consider that he's a pretty good passer as well. Like I definitely think isn't like a high-end passer just with some lag and like and high-end like processing speed and vision and decision-making stuff, but like he is really fluid, can make some really impressive live dribble passes as a 6'9" guy. So like there's a lot to like about Brandon Miller. I think in like most drafts, he'd probably be a guy I'd be more game with in like the top 3 or 4 range. I just think there's so many like really good prospects in this draft. Again, even if I wouldn't do it, I would get a team taking him in like the top 4 or even 3, maybe like less so for 3, but like I would get it. Like he's quite good, and I think there are definitely some people who have gotten like too low on him too. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree across the board. The off court thing is, I don't know. I'll be the first to, I don't know. But as far as like his profile, I think that he gets overrated as an athlete by some people. I think he's a fine athlete, but I've seen like my favorite comparison that I keep hearing is comparing him to Paul George, and Paul George is like a lot more athletic, like a lot more athletic.
Yeah, Paul George in college was also very, very different than current Paul George.
Well, yeah, young Paul George, by the way, he couldn't dribble. as a prospect. It was kind of funny.
Right. He was like an amazing shooter, incredible athlete, and like
and he couldn't
slasher,
dribble.
could not dribble
at all.
insane defender. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's just one of those. I mean, and Miller has got comparisons to Kevin Durant that are very silly. All that stuff you need to throw it out. But I do buy the shot, and you know, his ball skills and his shooting at that size, the floor is pretty high. I mean, I'm not someone who overstates floors. At least I try not to. I have a hard time seeing Brandon Miller not be a pretty good NBA player. Like I don't think he's going to be. I don't think he's going to be a superstar. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I do like the floor. I think, especially because I agree with you on the defense. I don't think it's great, but again, the physical tools, they're good enough. He'll be long enough. He's not going to kill you defensively, I don't think. So with that shooting the way it is, and like he can pass. I don't think he's a great passer, but he can pass. He can do all.
I think there really is like a way for his like strength and fluidity to like translate into some like legit creation stuff. Like I definitely think it's like, like I think some of the Ingram parallels are okay. I think Ingram was a better prospect.
I think that's my favorite one of the current like fringe star or higher players in the NBA that he gets compared to. That's the one I think is the closest. I agree.
I mean, I think Ingram was like probably like definitely a more complete scorer.
Isn't he longer too? Like, isn't he? Yes. Brandon Ingram's so long.
Freakish. He's like a 7'2" wingspan. He's freakish.
Yeah. So that's something to keep an eye on too. But like
less
more
good,
similar
like,
game wise
than Miller, and the passing was worse too. But like in terms of this guy who probably can be a number 2 offensive guy at their peak if they hit a high end outcome, which it seems like Ingram definitely has. Like that's a valuable player, and that's someone like worth like a top 3 pick in most drafts.
Oh, definitely. I mean, if you could assume that he's not even Brandon Ingram, but 90% of Brandon Ingram, that's a top 5 pick. I mean,
right? That's like
obviously.
Yeah, it's a guy who's like a solid top 5 pick. Like that's a good player. And again, I think just because of how good this draft is and how like there are other players in this draft that I think have like similar to higher level, high end outcomes in this range, like I might not do it, but like he's so good. Like he's going to be very good, I think.
Yeah, I agree. So I'll take up your entire life. Before we get to the Hawks candidates,
I told you I have nowhere to be.
I understand. It is what it is. But do you have? We've already talked about Vic and Scoot and Miller and Amen. Do you have a favorite prospect that we've not talked about in this range? Like, are you a big Jarace Walker guy? Are you a big Taylor Hendricks guy? Whitmore? Who's like your guy of that group? Like not just those guys, but anybody.
Probably, in that range. Probably Jarace. I mean, I think Asar's 4. I've had Amen and Asar 3-4 like for quite a while now, and I.
Oh yeah, when you're talking about Asar, that's my fault. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can quickly slip into Asar because, like, I wouldn't say like he's like one of my guys like Jarace is. Like, I like think he's like a very good prospect.
Oh yeah,
very different from his brother, which I think is cool that like they have such distinct games. Like still like an amazing athlete, just not like an all-time athlete. Like it's like Amen, like where his burst is really lacking, mainly, and he struggles to create advantages on the ball. But he's a much better shooter, has improved a ton, like willing to take like tough threes, like up to like 9+ threes a game towards like the end of the season, I think, or throughout some part of the season, I think. He's like a really great touch guy. He's like, like Amen is blowing by everyone to the rim, and Asar is like a MJ like fake fade mid-range scorer molds. Like in terms of his like play style, like being very patient and hitting a lot of like fadeaways and tough like leading mid-ranges and floaters. With like not as good as Amen, but pretty good passing as well, and probably better defense. Like that's gonna be a really, really good player as well. But yeah, I love Jarace. I think Jarace is probably like my favorite guy in this range. I like Taylor Hendricks, but not like I feel like the hype has gone a little far, at least for me. But I am a huge Jarace fan. I think the defensive upside, the playmaking and the feel and the scoring creation upside are all awesome. And I could easily see him being an all defense impact player and like having some funky offensive skills as well.
I was going to ask about Jarace too, because I knew you liked him, and people that listen to the podcast probably know that I'm a sucker for defense first guys. I love Jarace Walker. I guess my question, or maybe it's a concern, like, does he have the perimeter offensive skill, or is he gonna have to like, kind of be a center? You know what I mean? Like it's gonna.
I think he's gonna be able to do some stuff, and that's probably like where I differ from a lot of people. I mean, I do think he's gonna be a part-time center. Like I think it's pretty rare that I think people like guys can actually play the 5. Like I feel like you see a lot of like small 4. Like I don't really think Taylor Hendricks is a guy who I want playing the 5. Like for example, just because I think the strength is lacking, like more primary rim protection is lacking, like the passing skill. But like Jarace, I think you can play as a part-time 5, which is a rare thing to say. Because of how strong he is, how vertically explosive, how good
he's so physical. I mean,
weak side rim protection is incredible. Like he jumps passing lanes. He's, I don't think he's horrible on the ball at all. Like definitely a little stiff, like in his hips, just because of how huge he is, and not the quickest laterally, but like definitely can hold up as well. And then I think offensively, like the fact that his handle is so interesting, like he's really good at like creating shots in like that mid-range, like touch floater fadeaway area. I think I wonder how much of his like rim aversion is mentality because of how strong and like physical and like vertically explosive he is. Like when you see him get close to the rim, you see him bully guys, but he just like doesn't do that on his drives. And I think that could be like a low hanging fruit fix that makes a big impact for him potentially. I think the passing is like closer to elite than it is to good, and people aren't really giving him credit for that just because of how incredibly quickly he processes the floor. So even if he ends up not being a great shooter, which I don't love the shooting or anything, like he is a definitely problematic shooter. Like hopefully like the mid post, like mid range stuff can translate is the best hope, but like the outside shot is not good. But even without it, I think he can be good.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that the offensive questions are legitimate, but the passing is real and the defense is real, and he's physical, and I'm predisposed to loving what he does. So I think that he got a comparison. I'm only saying because it's a Hawks podcast. I had someone smart that I will say works somewhere in the league, unprompted, compare him to Hawks version of Paul Millsap.
I thought you were going to say Josh Smith.
No, that Josh Smith. We'll probably get to him later on. Josh Smith comparisons. Jalen Johnson is the one that gets those right-handed Josh Smith comparisons. But no, someone comped Jarace to the Hawks version of Paul Millsap, and I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. I mean, they're not the same player, but similar size.
I just don't think Jarace gets that level of shooting.
But even then, Millsap was not a great shooter. I mean, he was like I'll shoot it if I'm open kind of guy.
Oh yeah, I guess I forget that he. Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I think Jarace could be that. Like, I think it would look a lot different. Jarace is probably like more involved in the offense, like creation, passing centric, less like spacing and like cutting centric. But I think that could be like a reasonable thing. Like Millsap was always like an amazing like backline anchor. As like a non-center size dude, I think Jarace can be that as well for sure.
I always wonder if I got that text because I cover the Hawks, or because it's somebody that I talked about the draft stuff with all the time. Like, again, I'm not going to say who it is, but it's just interesting. It's like they probably had this thought like, oh, Hawks. I'll tell Brad. Anyway, I guess before we get to Hawks stuff, anybody else you want to talk about that's like a consensus top 10 player that will not be in the Hawks range? You're pretty confident of that? Anybody else you want to mention? Anybody you're out on while we're here?
I was gonna say wait. Whichever section Cason Wallace fits in. I don't know what we're thinking.
Yeah, I kind of don't know. So like, I think Cason Wallace.
But I'm not really out on anyone in like the top 10, honestly. I think it's like even though I'm not as huge like on Hendricks as some people, because I'm worried about the offense. Like he's still an incredible defensive prospect who can shoot. Like that's insanely valuable in the league, and I think top 10 is totally reasonable for him. Yeah. There isn't anyone who I like don't think is good. Oh, the only one that I would really hate is if like Jordan Hawkins like went to like the Magic at 11, that would be really bad. But I think anything else, like I think it's really strong class.
All right, that is it for this episode of the Locked On Hawks podcast. Please subscribe to the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Please leave 5-star feedback as well as ratings, reviews, all that fun stuff. Follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me on Twitter at BT Rowland. Follow my written work at patreon.com/BT Rowland. Thanks for listening, everybody. I really do appreciate it. And we'll see you all next time.